Commander Nathan Cross's cybernetic eye whirred softly as it adjusted to the bioluminescent glow emanating from the walls of Omega Erebus, the ancient space station that had been drifting in the Veil Nebula like a tomb for the better part of 3 centuries. The synthetic optic, a gift from Proxima Shrapnel that had nearly taken his head off, could see in spectrums that human eyes couldn't process, and right now, it was telling him that the supposedly dead station was very much alive. "Readings are off the charts, Commander," Dr. Sarah Kim called from behind him, her scanner chirping frantically as it tried to process energy signatures that shouldn't exist. The bioluminescent patterns aren't just residual energy. They're organized, like a circulatory system that's still functioning. Nathan touched the wall with his gloved hand, feeling a subtle pulse beneath the crystalline surface. The ethereals were supposed to have transcended beyond physical form 200 years ago, ascended to pure energy, according to the historical records. "Maybe they did," came the gravelly voice of Sergeant Torres, the team's demolitions expert whose job was to blast through sealed bulkheads if necessary. "Doesn't mean they took their buildings with them." The corridor stretched ahead of them like the throat of some cosmic beast, walls pulsing with soft blue-green light that cast shifting shadows on their environmental suits. Nathan's enhanced memory implants, another combat modification, installed after traumatic brain injury had scrambled his natural recall, suddenly flickered with something that felt like déjà vu but shouldn't be possible. For just a moment he could swear he'd walked these corridors before. "Commander," Dr. Kim's voice snapped him back to the present. "Are you receiving data from your implants? Your biosigns just spiked." Nathan shook his head, though the strange sense of familiarity lingered like an itch he couldn't scratch. "Negative. Just, something about this place feels familiar, probably just pattern recognition from studying the archaeological reports." Dr. Kim nodded, though her expression suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. The ethereal dominion was the most advanced civilization in recorded history. Their biointegrated architecture could last millennia with minimal power sources. What's unusual is that power sources shouldn't still be active after 3 centuries of abandonment. They continued deeper into the station, past chambers filled with crystalline furniture that still hummed with faint energy, through galleries where holographic art installations flickered with ghostly images of beings that looked like angels crossed with living light. Nathan's cybernetic eye captured details that pure biological vision would miss. Subtle energy flows, quantum fluctuations, the mathematical precision of architectural elements that seemed to grow rather than be constructed. "This wasn't built," he murmured, running his fingers along a support beam that curved like a tree branch. "It was grown. The whole station is essentially one massive organism." "That explains why the life support systems are still functional," Torres observed, checking his atmospheric readings. "Place is literally breathing around us." Dr. Kim was documenting everything with the enthusiasm of someone who just discovered her entire field of study had been revolutionized. "The implications are staggering. If ethereal bioarchitecture can maintain itself for centuries without external maintenance, we could be looking at technology that would solve humanity's expansion problems permanently." Nathan's implants flickered again, this time with something that felt less like memory and more like recognition. Images flashed through his enhanced consciousness, corridors filled with beings of impossible beauty, their gossamer wings catching light that seemed to emanate from their very souls, voices like crystalline bells speaking in harmonies that could move matter through pure sound. "Commander," Dr. Kim said, her scanner beeping with increasing urgency, "I'm detecting a massive energy signature ahead. Whatever's powering this station, it's concentrated in the central chamber." They emerged into a cathedral-sized space that took Nathan's breath away. The chamber rose in spiraling curves toward a ceiling that showed not empty space, but swirling nebula clouds shot through with aurora-like phenomena. Crystalline formations jutted from the walls like frozen music, each one resonating with barely audible tones that seemed to vibrate in his bones. And in the center of it all, suspended in a column of soft light, was a stasis pod of unprecedented sophistication. "Jesus Christ," Torres whispered, forgetting protocol in the face of something that defied rational explanation. "Is that what I think it is?" The pod was transparent, revealing its occupant with startling clarity. She appeared to be an ethereal female, though Nathan had never seen one of their species in person. The last confirmed ethereal had died decades before his birth. Her features were delicate beyond human genetics, her skin luminescent with the same soft light that filled the chamber. Gossamer wings were folded against her back like silk scarves, and her pointed ears were longer and more elegant than any alien species in current galactic civilization. "Doctor." Kim's instruments were practically screaming with excitement. "Life signs are stable. She's not dead. She's in some kind of metabolic suspension. Commander, we're looking at the first living ethereal anyone has seen in over 2 centuries." Nathan approached the pod slowly, his cybernetic eye analyzing the complex energy patterns surrounding the stasis field. His enhanced memory implants were firing rapidly now, flooding his consciousness with images that couldn't possibly be his own memories. A battlefield under alien stars, plasma fire lighting the darkness, gentle hands pulling him from the wreckage of his fighter craft. "Everyone had forgotten me," came a whisper so soft he thought he'd imagined it. Nathan froze, his enhanced hearing catching sounds that his team apparently couldn't detect. "Did anyone else hear that?" "Doctor." Kim and Torres looked at him with expressions of concern. "Hear what, Commander?" Dr. Kim asked. The pod system suddenly began to shift, internal mechanisms activating as if responding to some unseen signal. The stasis field flickered, and for one impossible moment, Nathan could swear that luminescent eyes had opened and fixed directly on his face with startling recognition. "But you remembered, human," the whisper came again, and this time Nathan was certain it wasn't his imagination. The sleeping queen was waking up. The awakening process began slowly, like dawn breaking over a world that had known only night for centuries. Nathan watched in fascination as the stasis pod's bioluminescent systems pulsed brighter, internal fluids cycling through crystalline channels, while monitoring systems that had been dormant for longer than human civilization had known spaceflight suddenly sprang to life. "Commander, her vitals are stabilizing," Dr. Kim reported, her voice tight with scientific excitement and professional concern. "But the energy readings are spiking beyond anything my instruments can properly measure. Whatever's happening in there, it's operating on principles we don't understand." Nathan's enhanced memory implants were flooding him with increasingly vivid flashbacks, images of plasma fire and desperate combat, of dying alone on a battlefield under twin moons, of being carried to safety by beings whose wings caught starlight like living prisms. The memories felt absolutely real, but they depicted events from Captain Nathan Cross, Terran Defense Force Service number 7749 Delta Prime, who had died at the Battle of Kepler Station 2 centuries before Nathan's birth. "This is impossible," he muttered, pressing his palm against his temple where the memory implants interfaced with his neural cortex. "I'm experiencing someone else's memories. Someone with my exact name and service record, who died 200 years ago." Dr. Kim looked up from her instruments with sharp attention. "Commander, there are documented cases of quantum consciousness resonance, especially around highly advanced alien technology. Your implants might be picking up residual psychic imprints from." The pod's containment field dissolved with a sound like distant music, and Queen Lysandra Velnia opened her eyes for the first time in 3 centuries. They were the color of captured starlight, luminescent silver with depths that seemed to hold the wisdom of ages, and they fixed immediately on Nathan's face with startling recognition. "Nathan Cross," she said, her voice carrying the crystalline bell-tone quality that had made ethereal speech legendary. "Terran Defense Force, Service Number 7749 Delta Prime." She sat up slowly, gossamer wings unfurling like silk scarves catching light. "You survived the wounds at Kepler Station." The accuracy of her statement hit the chamber like a quantum shock wave. Torres took an unconscious step backward, his hand moving toward his sidearm, while Dr. Kim stared at her instruments as if they'd suddenly started speaking in tongues. Nathan felt his enhanced neural implants surge with memory cascades that belonged to someone else but felt absolutely, impossibly familiar. "That's not possible," Nathan said, though even as he spoke, he was remembering the Battle of Kepler Station with perfect clarity. The way plasma bolts had torn through his fighter's cockpit, the feeling of life draining away through wounds that should have been instantly fatal, gentle hands pulling him from the wreckage, while voices like singing crystals promised he would survive. Queen Lysandra rose from the pod with fluid grace, her luminescent skin casting soft light throughout the chamber. She was taller than human females, perhaps 6.5 feet, with the kind of ethereal beauty that made artists weep and philosophers question the nature of perfection. Her gossamer wings weren't just decorative, they seemed to catch and manipulate light itself, creating subtle aurora effects in the air around her. "You don't remember consciously," she continued, approaching Nathan with steps that seemed to barely disturb the air. "The soul-binding process was traumatic. I preserved your essence by weaving it into my own life force, but reincarnation across centuries creates gaps in continuity." "Soul-binding," Dr. Kim managed to stammer. "That's theoretical xenopsychology. There's no confirmed evidence that consciousness can survive physical death through quantum entanglement with another being." Queen Lysandra turned her luminous gaze toward the scientist with something that might have been amusement. Dr. Sarah Kim, xenoarchaeologist, published 17 papers on ethereal transcendence theory, none of which came close to understanding what we actually achieved. She looked back at Nathan. "Your people theorized that we ascended to pure energy because you couldn't conceive of alternative explanations for our disappearance." Nathan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the station's environmental systems. "Alternative explanations. We didn't transcend, Nathan. We died." Queen Lysandra's voice carried 3 centuries of grief compressed into those simple words. "Every last one of my people, murdered by a plague that turned our greatest strength against us. Our ability to exist partially in higher dimensions made us vulnerable to a weapon specifically designed to target transcendent consciousness." The chamber's bioluminescent walls seemed to pulse in sympathy with her emotional state, casting shifting patterns of blue and silver light that created an almost hypnotic atmosphere. Nathan's implants were providing him with tactical analysis, even as his borrowed memories flooded him with personal knowledge of the woman standing before him. She had been Queen Lysandra even then, though younger, leading her people's alliance with humanity against threats from the Galactic Rim. Captain Nathan Cross had been liaison officer to her royal guard, a role that had evolved from professional duty into something far deeper and more complex. "The Void Collective," Nathan heard himself say, the words coming from memories that weren't originally his. "They waited for our alliance to strengthen, for your people to lower their defenses, then struck with biological warfare designed specifically to target ethereal physiology." Queen Lysandra nodded sadly. "By the time we recognized the threat, it was too late. The plague spread through our collective consciousness, turning our unity into a vector for mutual destruction. I was the last to succumb, and only survived by severing my connection to our people and entering stasis before the weapon could complete its work." Dr. Kim was frantically taking notes, her scientific mind struggling to process revelations that would reshape everything humanity thought it knew about galactic history. "But the quantum consciousness binding, how is that possible? How could you preserve someone's soul across reincarnation?" "Love," Queen Lysandra said simply, though her luminous eyes never left Nathan's face. The captain was dying from wounds suffered protecting my people. I bound his essence to mine to save him, though I knew it would take centuries for his soul to find new flesh and return to me. Nathan felt the truth of her words resonating in his enhanced neural implants, borrowed memories confirming what his logical mind wanted to reject. Captain Nathan Cross had loved Queen Lysandra Velnia with the desperate intensity of someone who knew their time together was measured in moments rather than years. That love had transcended death itself, preserved in quantum entanglement until fate brought them together again. "Your Majesty," Nathan said, the formal address coming naturally despite his confusion, "if the Void Collective destroyed your people, why maintain the stasis? Why wait 3 centuries to wake up?" Queen Lysandra's expression shifted to something that might have been hope tempered by desperate uncertainty. "Because, my dear Nathan, I was waiting for you to return. And because the Void Collective's work isn't finished. They're still out there, still hunting for the last traces of transcendent species to complete their genocidal mission." The station's defense systems suddenly activated around them. Ancient ethereal technology responding to its queen's presence by powering up weapons that had been dormant for centuries. Alarms began chiming in harmonious tones that somehow managed to sound both beautiful and terrifying. And, Queen Lysandra added, her voice carrying new urgency, "They know I'm awake." The station's awakening created a cascade of systems activation that transformed Omega Erebus from a derelict tomb into a functioning fortress within minutes. Nathan watched through his cybernetic eye as energy conduits that had been dark for centuries began pulsing with renewed life, while defensive arrays deployed from hidden compartments with the fluid grace of living organisms. "Commander, we need to evacuate immediately," Torres reported, his combat instincts overriding scientific curiosity. "Those energy signatures are spiking beyond safe parameters, and my threat assessment is lighting up like a Christmas tree." Dr. Kim was torn between terror and fascination, her instruments detecting phenomena that would revolutionize human understanding of physics if she lived long enough to publish her findings. The biointegrated systems are responding to Queen Lysandra's biometric signature. The entire station is essentially coming back to life around her. Nathan felt his enhanced memory implants interfacing with ethereal technology in ways that shouldn't be possible, borrowed knowledge from his previous incarnation, allowing him to understand systems that operated on principles of consciousness rather than mere engineering. "It's not just responding to her, it's responding to both of us. The quantum entanglement between our souls is providing dual authorization for command-level access." Queen Lysandra moved to what appeared to be a crystalline control interface, her delicate hands dancing over surfaces that responded to her touch with cascades of light and sound. "The monitoring systems confirm what I feared. Void Collective scout ships have been maintaining surveillance of this sector for decades, waiting for exactly this moment. They're already mobilizing." "How long do we have?" Nathan asked, his tactical training warring with memories that belonged to someone else but felt absolutely real. "Perhaps 12 hours before their dreadnoughts arrive. Enough time to restore the station's primary defenses, but not enough to fully repair 3 centuries of dormancy." Queen Lysandra's luminescent eyes met his with desperate determination. "Nathan, I need you to understand what's at stake here. The Void Collective doesn't just want to eliminate the last ethereal. They want to complete a ritual that will grant them dominion over all transcendent species in the galaxy." Nathan's borrowed memories provided context that his training never could. Images of battles fought not just with weapons and tactics, but with the very fabric of reality itself. Conflicts where consciousness was both weapon and battlefield. The Void Collective weren't just conquerors. They were entities of pure negation, beings that existed to unmake the transcendent potential of other species. "Dr. Kim," he said, making a decision that went against every protocol in the book, Can you establish a secure communication channel with Admiral Harrison? We need to report what we found here, but through channels that won't be intercepted by void intelligence assets." Dr. Kim stared at him, as if he'd suggested they all strip naked and dance in the tours. Nathan ordered. "I need you to help Dr. Kim establish that secure communication link. Use military encryption protocols, but route it through the ethereal communication array. Their quantum entanglement systems might be harder to intercept." As his team worked to contact human command, Nathan found himself drawn deeper into the station's awakening consciousness. His enhanced implants were interfacing with ethereal technology at levels that created new hybrid awareness, human determination merging with transcendent wisdom to produce capabilities that neither species could achieve alone. "The memories are returning faster now," Queen Lysindra observed, her musical voice carrying notes of hope and sorrow. "Can you recall the gardens of Velthara where we walked between battles? The way starlight felt when filtered through crystalline trees." Nathan could remember, not just intellectually, but emotionally, with the full weight of love that had transcended death and reincarnation. Captain Nathan Cross had been willing to die for his queen, and apparently had, though his soul's preservation through quantum entanglement had created possibilities that even advanced ethereal science hadn't fully understood. "I remember," he said softly, though part of him wondered if he was remembering actual events or simply accessing shared consciousness through their soul bond. "I remember promising that nothing would keep me from finding my way back to you." "But even death couldn't break that promise," Queen Lysindra whispered, her luminous eyes shining with tears that looked like liquid starlight. "Though I sometimes wondered if preservation of your essence was mercy or cruelty, binding you to my fate when you could have found peace in whatever lies beyond mortal existence." Nathan felt the weight of cosmic destiny settling on his shoulders like armor forged from condensed starlight. Maybe that choice isn't ours to make. Maybe some bonds are strong enough to reshape the universe around them. The communication array suddenly crackled with incoming signals. Dr. Kim had successfully established contact with Admiral Harrison, though the quantum-encrypted channel was already showing signs of void interference. Nathan realized they had minutes, perhaps less, before enemy forces could triangulate their position and begin jamming their transmission. "Admiral, this is Commander Cross reporting code Black Priority from the Veil Nebula. We have confirmed contact with surviving ethereal royalty, an imminent threat from hostile forces designated Void Collective. Request immediate military support for defense of critical xenoarchaeological assets." The response came back crackling with static and disbelief. "Commander Cross, confirm your last transmission. Did you report contact with living ethereals?" Nathan looked at Queen Lysandra, her luminescent beauty illuminated by the station's awakening defensive systems. Gossamer wings spread as she interfaced with technology that operated on principles of pure consciousness. Around them, the biointegrated architecture pulsed with renewed life, preparing for a battle that would determine the fate of transcendent civilization across the galaxy. "Confirmed, Admiral. We have one surviving ethereal royal, and she's about to make her last stand against enemies who want to finish what they started 3 centuries ago." Queen Lysandra's voice joined the transmission, her crystalline tones carrying across the quantum-encrypted channel with startling clarity. "Admiral Harrison, this is Queen Lysandra Velnia of the Ethereal Dominion. I formally request military alliance with the Human Federation against the Void Collective threat to all transcendent species." The long pause that followed was interrupted only by the growing harmonics of the station's weapon systems, powering up for the first time in 300 years. "Your Majesty," Admiral Harrison's voice finally came back, heavy with the weight of decisions that would reshape galactic history. "Consider your request approved. We're dispatching everything we can spare, but you'll have to hold position until reinforcements arrive." Nathan felt Queen Lysandra's hand slip into his, her luminescent skin warm against his enhanced flesh. Together, Nathan. Like we promised each other in another lifetime. Together, he confirmed, squeezing her fingers as the first Void scout ships dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the system. No matter what it costs. The Void collective dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace like tumors metastasizing in the fabric of reality itself, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with energies that made Nathan's cybernetic eye ache to look upon them. Through the station's quantum sensors, he could see that each ship was less constructed than grown, composed of living darkness that fed on the transcendent potential of sentient beings. 37 capital ships and supporting swarms, Queen Lysandra reported, her delicate hands interfacing with crystalline control systems that responded to her touch with cascades of light and harmonic resonance. They've been planning this assault for decades, waiting for my awakening to complete their genocidal ritual. Nathan felt his enhanced memory implants flooding him with tactical knowledge from his previous incarnation. Captain Nathan Cross had fought these creatures before, in battles that spanned dimensions where consciousness itself became both weapon and battlefield. The Void Collective weren't just conquerors, they were entities of pure negation, existing to unmake the transcendent potential that threatened their dominion over base reality. Dr. Kim Tors, get to the evacuation pods, Nathan ordered, his voice carrying the authority of someone who'd commanded starships in impossible battles. This fight operates on principles that conventional military training can't prepare you for. Commander, with respect, you're talking about facing down a fleet with a single space station that's been dormant for 3 centuries, Tors protested, though his combat instincts were already moving him toward the escape routes. Not just any station, Queen Lysandra corrected, her luminous eyes reflecting the growing energy buildup in the station's weapon systems. Omega Erebus was the crown jewel of ethereal defensive technology, designed to stand against threats that transcend purely physical warfare. And Nathan isn't just any human. He's the reincarnated soul of the officer I trained personally in transcendent combat techniques. Nathan felt the truth of her word resonating in his borrowed memories, as the station's bio-integrated systems began responding to his hybrid consciousness. Human determination merged with ethereal wisdom, creating tactical awareness that spanned multiple dimensions of reality simultaneously. He could perceive the approaching Void fleet not just as physical objects, but as concentrations of negation energy that sought to drain the transcendent potential from all life. The primary weapon array requires dual consciousness interface, Queen Lysandra explained, her gossamer wings spreading as she moved to the central control matrix. One to channel ethereal transcendent energy, one to provide human adaptive flexibility. Together, we can generate defensive capabilities that neither species could achieve alone. The first wave of Void fighters reached the station's perimeter, their dark hulls absorbing light and hope with equal efficiency. Nathan watched through enhanced tactical displays as conventional weapons fire simply disappeared into their negation fields, absorbed and converted into fuel for their reality-draining abilities. Beginning transcendent weapon initialization, Queen Lysandra announced, her musical voice taking on harmonics that seemed to resonate with the station's crystalline architecture. Nathan, I need you to trust me completely. The consciousness merger required for this level of interface. It's more intimate than anything biological beings can experience. Nathan felt his enhanced neural implants beginning to synchronize with ethereal quantum consciousness technology, his awareness expanding beyond the boundaries of individual identity, as Queen Lysandra's transcendent essence merged with his reincarnated soul. The experience was beyond physical intimacy. It was a unity of consciousness that made two beings temporarily into one, sharing not just thoughts and emotions, but the very essence of what made them unique individuals. Through their merged awareness, Nathan experienced the full weight of Queen Lysandra's 3 centuries of solitude, the crushing loneliness of being the last of her species, while carrying the responsibility for preventing galactic genocide. She, in turn, felt his human capacity for hope in impossible circumstances, the stubborn determination to fight even when logic dictated surrender. Initiating primary weapon discharge, their unified voice announced as the station's central spire began channeling energies that operated on principles beyond conventional physics. The beam that lanced out from Omega Erebus wasn't just concentrated energy. It was weaponized transcendence, reality restructured at the quantum level to assert the existence of hope over negation, creation over destruction. Where it touched the Void fighters, they didn't explode so much as remember that they had never actually existed in the first place, unmaking themselves from the fabric of reality, with sounds like the universe sighing in relief. "First wave neutralized," Nathan heard himself say, though his voice carried harmonics that belonged to Queen Lysandra's crystalline speech patterns. Their merged consciousness made tactical assessment a shared experience, human adaptability guiding ethereal power with precision that neither species could achieve alone. The Void dreadnoughts responded by deploying their ultimate weapon, reality anchors that began draining the transcendent potential from local space-time, creating zones where consciousness itself became heavy and sluggish. Nathan felt their merged awareness straining against the negation field, Queen Lysandra's luminescent essence flickering like a candle in cosmic wind. "They're using the same principle that destroyed my people," she whispered through their shared consciousness, her grief threatening to overwhelm their tactical focus. "Turning transcendence into a vulnerability, making our greatest strengths into weaknesses." But Nathan's reincarnated memories provided context that even Queen Lysandra had forgotten. Captain Nathan Cross had developed countermeasures during the final battles of the ethereal human alliance, techniques that used human emotional resilience to stabilize transcendent consciousness against negation attacks. "Remember what you taught me in the gardens of Velthara," Nathan said, his enhanced neural implants drawing on borrowed memories of training sessions that had been disguised as romantic interludes. "Transcendence isn't about rising above emotion. It's about integrating all aspects of consciousness into unified purpose." Their merged awareness shifted. Queen Lysandra's transcendent wisdom, guided by Nathan's human capacity for maintaining hope in the face of overwhelming despair. The station's weapons systems responded to their unified consciousness with increasing power, bio-integrated technology channeling energies that operated on principles of pure will made manifest. "Incoming transmission from Admiral Harrison." Dr. Kim's voice crackled through the communication array, though she and Tors had already evacuated to a safe distance. "Human fleet ETA 12 minutes, but the Void forces are accelerating their assault pattern." Through the station's quantum sensors, Nathan and Lysandra could perceive the enemy's true objective. They weren't just trying to destroy Omega Erebus. They were positioning for a ritual that would use Queen Lysandra's transcendent essence to power a reality-draining weapon, capable of extinguishing the evolutionary potential of entire species. "They need me alive but helpless," Queen Lysandra realized, her luminous eyes reflecting the tactical displays that showed Void boarding craft approaching through dimensional rifts. "The ritual requires a living transcendent consciousness to anchor their negation matrix." Nathan felt his human stubbornness asserting itself against cosmic despair. "Then we make sure they don't get one. Either we stop them here, or we make certain there's nothing left for them to use." The boarding craft breached the station's hull through dimensional phase shifts, disgorging Void warriors that existed as animate shadows given malevolent purpose. They moved through the station's corridors like living nightmares, absorbing light and hope wherever they passed while seeking the central chamber where Nathan and Queen Lysandra maintained their desperate defense. "The human fleet won't arrive in time," Queen Lysandra observed with tragic acceptance as their merged consciousness calculated tactical probabilities. We can destroy most of their attack force, but not before they complete their boarding action. The choice becomes whether to die fighting, or to activate the station's self-destruct to prevent the ritual. Nathan's enhanced memory implants provided him with one final option, a technique that Captain Nathan Cross had theorized, but never tested, using the soul bond between them to create a controlled transcendence cascade that would transform rather than destroy. It was untested, potentially fatal, and absolutely insane by any rational standard. "There's a third choice," he said through their merged consciousness as Void Warriors breached the outer defenses. "We don't just fight them, we become something they can't negate. Full consciousness integration, permanent merger of our essences into a new form of transcendent being." Queen Lysandra's response carried 3 centuries of desperate hope mixed with terrified uncertainty. "Nathan, that's theoretical xenopsychology. There's no guarantee we'd survive the process, much less maintain our individual identities." "But if we do survive," Nathan replied, his human optimism refusing to acknowledge impossible odds, "we become something the Void Collective has never encountered. A hybrid consciousness that bridges the gap between species, combining human adaptability with ethereal transcendence in ways that might be immune to their negation effects." The Void Warriors were at the chamber entrance now, their presence draining light and warmth from the air as they prepared for the final assault. Through the station's sensors, Nathan could see the human fleet dropping out of hyperspace at maximum combat velocity, Admiral Harrison's flagship leading the charge in what would probably be a futile attempt to prevent genocidal completion. "Together?" Queen Lysandra asked, her musical voice carrying all the love that had transcended death and reincarnation, all the hope that had sustained her through centuries of solitude. "Together," Nathan confirmed, their merged consciousness reaching toward the station's core systems as the Void Warriors breached the chamber's defenses. The Transcendence Cascade began as pure energy, but quickly evolved into something unprecedented. 2 souls becoming one while somehow remaining 2, consciousness multiplied rather than merged, creating a hybrid being that existed simultaneously in multiple dimensions of reality. Nathan felt his human identity expanding to encompass ethereal transcendence, while Queen Lysandra experienced mortal determination that refused to accept defeat even in the face of cosmic annihilation. The explosion of unified consciousness that erupted from Omega Erebus wasn't destructive, it was creative. Reality restructured around the principle that love could indeed conquer negation. That transcendence wasn't about rising above mortality, but about transforming it into something greater than the sum of its parts. When the light faded, the Void Fleet found itself facing something they'd never encountered. 2 beings who'd become one while remaining 2. A hybrid consciousness that existed as living proof that transcendence and humanity could coexist in ways that made them stronger rather than vulnerable. "Everyone had forgotten me," Queen Lysandra whispered, her voice now carrying harmonics that included Nathan's human warmth alongside her crystalline music. "But you remembered human. And in remembering, you helped me remember what transcendence truly means." Nathan felt her words resonating through their shared consciousness as the station's ultimate transformation completed itself around them. Not a weapon, not a fortress, but a beacon of unified consciousness that would guide other species toward transcendence without vulnerability, evolution without extinction. The war against the Void Collective was far from over, but for the first time in 3 centuries, transcendent civilization had hope. And sometimes, hope was enough to reshape the universe.